This is Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. Mitch Lafon.
Welcome to this episode of Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon, and joining me from the band New England, it is Hirsh Gardner. Of course, the band opened up for KISS on their 1979 Dynasty Tour, and Hirsh did record with Vinnie Vincent. So we hear a lot of those stories, and you're also going to hear, I think, my continued battles with Mac OS Catalina. I know that Mac OS Catalina has nothing to do with rock, but I'm telling you, this was the first interview I recorded after my update, and I haven't decided if I'm going to edit everything out that went wrong. But there's a part. This interview is in 3 parts, and the reason it was in 3 parts is because the software after the update kept crashing. And anyway, well, we'll see. At the end of the first part, if I decide to leave it in, and maybe I will, for some reason, everything started echoing, and it went on for about 6-7 seconds, and then I said, "F it, Hirsh, I got to call you back." But if, as you're listening to this at the end of the first part, which is about 20 some minutes in, and you hear some echoing, that is me leaving it in on purpose so you can hear the annoyances that I had to deal with after I updated. But anyway, that said, I did see the KISS Dynasty Tour in 1979 at the Montreal Forum, August 6th to be precise. This year, August 16th, 2019, I went to see KISS End of the Road in Montreal. For those of you that follow me on Twitter and Facebook and all that, you know the story. She took me to my first show 40 years ago. I took her to what is probably her last show, not because she's dying or anything, but just because I don't think at 79 she's going to be running out to see Metallica next week. So it sort of completed the circle. But of course, the first band I saw, you go, "Oh, I saw KISS first." Well, yes, but no, I actually saw New England first. The first band I ever saw perform live was New England. And so it was a great pleasure to talk to Hirsh. They've got some shows coming up at the end of the month here in October. A new box set, 5 CDs coming out in November. All of that is detailed in the interview. And so let's just get right over to it. Here is the one, the only, Hirsh Gardner. We are speaking with Hirsh Gardner of the band New England. Of course, many of you remember them opening up for KISS on the Dynasty Tour in 1979. That was my first show, August 6, 1979, at the Montreal Forum. And therefore, Hirsh, bonjour, as we say, you were the first band I ever saw in concert. So congratulations, you won. Right?
That's amazing. That is truly amazing. It was a great time to be in a rock and roll band, man. I got to tell you.
Yeah, it really was. And listen, it led me to do what I'm doing today just because it was such an event, right? I mean, here you guys come out and you're opening up for the mighty KISS and the mighty show, and I'm trying to think how old I was when I saw the show. I was 10, I guess, right? So to see the blood and the sounds and the lights and Peter Criss doing Beth and the Ace Frehley, it's not a flaming guitar, you know what I mean, the lit up guitar there, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, the old Les Paul with the flames coming out, that was great.
It was really something special to see. So, but we're going to talk about that. But the band New England is still around, still kicking, still doing shows. So we've got some shows to talk about. But then we've also got this the New England Archives Box Volume 1 5 CD box set coming out from Cherry Red Records, out on November 22nd. So where do you want to start? Should we start about the upcoming shows, or do you want to talk about this box set, or? Well, I guess we'll keep KISS and stuff for after. We'll get into the fanboy stuff first. But all right, let's
okay, that sounds good.
Let's do the shows. So a few years ago, the band had been inactive for many years, and you got together and you played a couple of shows. I guess they were in Connecticut or somewhere in the Northeast. Went well. You've done more shows since then. We are at the beginning of October 2019. What's coming up on the calendar so fans can check that out?
Well, we've got so every year since about 2006, we may have skipped one or two, but we get together and we do our annual tour, and so we've done. We usually do some dates in the New England area, of course, and we usually hit LA. And we've actually been over to Japan, which was actually amazing because the band never actually played in Japan up until more recent times. So the dates that we have coming up now are October 25th. We're at the Spire Center for the Arts in Plymouth, Massachusetts, which is, of course, right down the street from what? Plymouth Rock? Is that what that Christopher Columbus discovered? So
probably.
Yeah, it's a great theater. It's a renovated church, so you've got beautiful stained glass windows, and they've changed all the pews into really comfortable seating. So the Spire Center for the Arts on the 25th of October. So if you're in the New England area, come and see us then. And then the next night we're at the Bull Run Music Hall, which is in Shirley, Massachusetts. So both of these New England dates, and I say New England, the area, not the band, are sort of like opposite ends of Boston. One is south of Boston and the other one is northwest of Boston. So that gives our fan base in the area, a chance to come and see the band. And then we fly out to LA, and we're going to rehearse out in LA for a few days and party, of course. And then we're playing Grand Oaks Live, which is a beautiful venue in Uplands, California. And you can look up all this stuff on the internet. But it'd be great to see some longtime friends and fans at all these shows. The band's going to be playing for about 75 minutes. We've got, the rock and roll set with the full regalia, kick-ass rock and roll, and we're going to break it down and do a 4 or 5 song acoustic set in the middle of the in the middle of the show. So it's going to be fun, man. We just I'll tell you, the first time we did this in 2006, which was after 25 years that we hadn't played together. We got together for like 2 days in our small, tiny little rehearsal studio in Boston. And we played this gig right in downtown Boston. Then all the local guys were there. Steven Tyler was there, James Montgomery, the guys from the Cars. So a lot of celebs were in the crowd. And I'll tell you, for not having played in 25 years, that night we just kicked ass. I was blown away by the sound I was hearing from the guys in the band. It was just so good. So it's it's fun to get together with the guys. We just have a party. We laugh all week long. So it's going to be a real fun week. It's going to be a fun week.
Oh, it's going
2 weeks actually.
It's going to be a great. It's going to be fantastic actually. Now you've also have the Hirsh Gardner Project, HGP, which plays shows. Is that something that's completely different from New England in the sense where you don't play any of the New England material, or is it really sort of a collection of your 2 solo albums and the New England stuff and the stuff you might have done with Vinnie? What's the difference between that and New England? Okay.
Well, for years, like after New England broke up in '83, I actually put together a solo project, and I was going to be, the lead singer in the band and have some fun. But I was so busy doing producing back then. And I guess we'll talk a little bit about Vinnie, but that's when Vinnie and I got together and did a bunch of stuff. But so I stopped doing the solo project back then, and for all that time, I kept on saying to myself, man, you should really put the solo project together. So after I put out 2 solo albums, I decided it's time to put a band together, and I've been working with my buddy Joe Filoni, who's an amazing guitar player. I used him on a lot of my sessions on my albums. So I just decided to put a band together, and I front the band, play a little guitar. I've got an amazing drummer, Stephen Michael Sorum, Tony Pulio on bass, David Sumner is my keyboard player, and of course Joe Filoni and myself. And so we do a bunch of stuff off the solo albums, and yes, I actually do a few New England songs, and they sound great. It's a bit of a different vibe, but it's it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. And that's what music's all about for me at this point. It's just, go out and have some fun and express yourself. If the fans love it, I'm loving it. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And well, you know what? You're right about having fun and doing this for fun. Every so often doing these interviews and doing the shows is always a lot of fun. Sometimes when a fan writes in and says a negative comment, it gets a little less fun, but generally it's great. You do have those 2 solo albums, My Brain Needs a Holiday and Wasteland for Broken Hearts.
Yeah.
The last one came out in 2017 in August. Talk to me a little bit about those two, because they are like 14 years apart. Is that something that you want to get back to and start having more Hirsh albums, or are you waiting to have a New England album? What in terms of new music, where are you in your head? Are you doing more Hirsh? Are you doing more New England? Are you thinking of other stuff?
Yeah, great question. I'm writing. I write all the time, and the 14-year period was, I put the solo album out, which was Wasteland for Broken Hearts, and that came out on MTM Records in Europe and Marquee Avalon in Japan, and our own label here in the States, GB Music, and then I went back to producing again. So I've been, just producing, and I'm always in the studio, but it just keeps coming back to me. It's just, Hirsh, you're writing songs all the time. You're recording all these other people. Record some of your own stuff and put it out. So that's what ended up happening with My Brain Needs a Holiday. And since then, I'm still writing. I've got 5 or 6 songs in the can right now. So I probably will put out more music in the near future, and just keep writing and keep playing drums, singing, playing guitar and piano. Just because, it's what I do, man. It's just like every day you get up and, what am I going to do today? So I just go down to the studio in the homestead and record music. So that's what I'm doing, and I just love doing it. And I'm still producing different projects here and there. So hopefully we'll get some more music out pretty soon.
See, I'm looking forward to that. Now there's one thing I found out in researching you, which I hadn't known back as a fan, and I don't even know if it's accurate, but it says that you are raised in Canada. You were raised in a small Canadian town?
Well, not a small community. I was raised in Toronto, Canada, man. You fellow Canuck here.
Well, it's small in terms of their Stanley Cup championships. Let's just put it that way.
Oh, stop it. The greatest experience, the 2 greatest experiences I had playing in New England. One was playing at Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto. And I think that was probably the week before you saw us at the Forum in Montreal. And, man, I was in heaven because I was a Leafs fan since I was, like 4 years old. Went to many, many games at Maple Leaf Gardens up on Jarvis and Yonge. And
you must have seen so many Stanley Cup parades from the 1969 to, now. Oh, wait, none.
Almost none. But back then, with Frank Mahovlich, Davey Keon, Johnny Bauer, Punch Imlach, coach. When I played at the Garden, I was walking through the Garden looking at all these pictures of all these incredible, hockey players. And then, of course, when we played the Montreal Forum, there I was looking at, pictures of Jacques Plante, Jean Beliveau, Maurice Richard, Rocket Richard.
I actually lived next to Ken Dryden growing up, so 1979 was a good year. I mean, I literally went to see New England and KISS at the Forum, and when I drove home, right by Ken Dryden's house. So,
that's wild.
I know, right?
That's wild.
But okay, so let us talk about some of this stuff here. You know what? Let's get one more plug into this New England box set, because this thing, folks, if you go to cherryred.co.uk, cherryred.co.uk, search up New England. It'll come up, the New England Archives Box Volume 1, 5 CDs, only £21, so about $40, $41, which is a great deal for 5 CDs. Talk to me about this. Where does this material come from? What can people expect? Who put it together? Because I'm looking at it, disc 1, Earmark Studios, disc 2, Blizzard tape, disc 3, Earmark. There's just a lot of great, rough mix before Electric Ladyland, intermedia mix, Target demos. I mean, this is like a bonanza. So explain the bonanza to the fans.
All right. Well, it really is a wonderful retrospective of the history of the band, and we can just start in 1978. A friend of ours owned a studio in Philadelphia and invited us down to do some demos. Now, in 78, we started rehearsing for the New England band in 77. And by 78, we had written, like 10 or 11 songs. So we went down to Philadelphia and we recorded these songs. And a lot of these songs are just demos of what ended up being on the album. But of course, some of these songs, like Candy, which is the third song on the Earmark Studio track, that never ever made it to an album, but it is truly New England. That's actually one of my favorite songs. I Will Be There, Shoot, that was on the first album. Don't Ever Want to Lose You, of course, that was on the first album. But that might actually be a different arrangement than what Paul Stanley produced on our first New England album. Hello, Hello, Even When I'm Away Searching for Someone to Love, which was that one actually didn't make our first album, but we had it on our second album. And then it goes to the Blizzard tape of New England, which is the next CD. 1978, in the New England area, we had the Blizzard of 78. And I lived on a little 14-acre estate where I had, my home, and then there was another house on the estate, which was the studio. And I knocked all the walls out of this second home and put together, we built a 30 by 30 studio. We were actually stranded in that blizzard for days because nobody was going anywhere. We had like 4 to 5 feet of snow in the New England area. So during that time, I had my old TAC 4-track recorder, and all of those songs that are on that second disc, those were recorded during the blizzard of 78 while we were stranded in our studio. And then we have some more. Then we have another Earmark studio CD, which is more of the same songs, but I believe that those are all like secondary mixes or different mixes. Then it goes to the next disc, which was Intermedia Studios in 1975. So after New England was actually a band called Fatback back in 73. And in 74, we changed our name to Target and then Jack. I think we changed the name of the band so that club owners wouldn't know who we were and they would rehire us because we were playing the most outrageous music, and they just wanted to hear top 40 hit songs, and we were playing original music interspaced with, our own versions of some of the hit songs of the day. So anyway, so we changed the name of the band every once in a while so we could get future gigs. But that recording of Familiar Faces was something that John and I did at Intermedia Studios in downtown Boston, which was subsequently bought by the Cars. It was a great 24-track recording studio, and that was actually one of the very first songs that was recorded as New England, and it's never ever been released. And it's I've heard these things, and they bring back such great memories, and they sound great. Disc 3 tells me that it's 1978 rough mixes before Electric Lady. The first New England album that was recorded with Paul Stanley as producer and Mike Stone, who was our producer-engineer. So we went down to New York and recorded that album. We recorded at Electric Ladyland, which was a thrill. And so these are all demos and rough mixes that we did at the studio. Let's see. Then we have bonus tracks. Now I'm reading this myself because I can't keep track of it all. Bonus tracks, Trident Studio rough mixes. So the first album was completed in 78, and the boys went over to England and mixed the album at Trident. So these are some rough mixes that Mike Stone and Paul Stanley did. And just a side note, in case anybody doesn't know, Mike Stone was actually a second engineer on the Beatles albums, And Mike Stone is the same guy that produced Bohemian Rhapsody with Queen. And we were huge fans of, Queen, Mike Stone, Roy Thomas Baker. That whole sound, that English sound, was something that we really, really loved. And when we had an opportunity to pick our producers, Mike Stone's name came up, and we just said, yeah, absolutely, let's go with that. So what else do we have? We got intermediate rough mixes. So this is the second New England. Oh, wait a minute. Let me take stock here. Separate delay conversation. Money. Yeah. So this is the second New England album, disc 4, and these are all rough mixes that never made it to the final release. So that's an interesting listen as well. So if you've got both the second album or the third album, and you compare these, you'll definitely hear some differences. Bonus tracks, It's Never Too Late, which was mixed by our friend Jim Boyer in New Jersey. And then Target demos, if anybody's reading from the list of songs. I mentioned the group Target, which was the predecessor to New England. So those recordings might have been done as far back as 73. And our lead vocalist at that time was Kenny Mealy. And John and Kenny and I shared vocals in that project. So those are all songs that predate New England, and it's great listening to those so you can see the difference of or the sameness of the sound between the polished New England records that we released and what we were doing 4, 5, 6, 7 years before that. And you can see how well the sound developed over time. Disc 5, oh man, it just keeps going here. Angel, Back on the Streets Again, which is not the Vinnie Vincent Back on the Streets. Head Chopper, which is a kick-ass metal song that you're going to love. Heat of the Ocean, which I believe that song ended up being a rewrite on Alcatraz's first album. I don't think they called it Heat of the Ocean. That might have been...
Yes,
what did they call that?
Yes,
What's that?
It was called something else.
Oh.
Yeah. I'll have to confer with Jimmy and Gary to find out what the heck that was on the Alcatraz album, but it's pretty much the same riff. And Marlena, there were a couple of different versions of that, which is another song. Now these were songs that we always revisited for the fourth New England album as well, which never got released. And so that's a basic history of all of these songs that was put together by Giles Lavery. And Giles is a dear friend of ours and is also managing Alcatraz now with Jimmy Waldo, playing keyboards in the band. And I know Gary Shea had an awful lot to do with putting this together. And all of this stuff comes from all of our archives. I know I had tons of tapes at home that I went through and sent off to see if they wanted to put stuff on it. So I can't wait till it comes out, and I'm going to, sequester myself for a couple hours and listen to all these tunes again. It's going to be fun. It's going to be great.
Oh, it'll be a nap. Oh. There's an echo when I talk. Can you hear that?
Can you hear that?
I don't hear it, thank God, because that throws me off.
It's completely throwing me off.
All
right.
Uh-oh.
You're listening to Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. Rock Talk.
All right, so you had a chance to hear a little bit of that echo that was going on now. I didn't play the entire segment. It was about maybe 15 or 20 seconds, but I gave you just a taste of it because I just figured you had to understand or appreciate what was going on. And so we did a part 1, we did a part 2, and we did a part 3. And the reason we had to split up this interview into these little segments is because at the end of part 1, like you just heard, echo. We come back, start doing part 2, echo, hang up, do it again, part 3, and then we just said, you know what? Merci, bonsoir. Thank you, good night. It's been a pleasure. Anyway, hope you're enjoying Hirsh so far, and let me get right back. Here is, once again, from New England, Hirsh Gardner. We are back with Hirsh Gardner of New England. I know we abruptly ended session 1, but we have been having some gremlins in the machine this week, so c'est la vie. But rebonjour, Hirsh. How are you? How are you now?
I'm good.
Half an hour later, as we try to finish this.
I'm good.
All right, so we were talking about the New England Archives, box set volume 1. I have posted a link on my Facebook properties, the Rock Talk site and my site. Just follow that,
Great.
Go check that out. But I want to get to your site, hirshgardner.com. On there, yes, we like hirshgardner.com. There is a part where it says, and I'm going to quote directly from the site, and then we're going to get into this. It says, a phone call from KISS's Gene Simmons would take Hirsh and fellow New Englanders Shay and Waldo to L.A. to work with an upcoming singer-songwriter, Vinnie Cusano. The band Warrior came to be, but this was short-lived as Cusano was quickly snatched up by KISS, assuming the name Vinnie Vincent. So once more, Hirsh found himself looking for a new direction. So let's talk about this. So, you know, I was very well aware that you had done this Warrior stuff and Vinnie had been there. But Gene Simmons put you and Vinnie together?
Yeah, it was, you know, we had a pretty great relationship with the guys in KISS, and, you know, Bill O'Coin was our manager, and, we knew the guys well, and we toured with them and all that. So, not only did Gene Simmons call us, but my friend, Lenny Pizzi, who was the head of Epic Records, also contacted us the same week as Gene called and said, hey, you know, Hirsh, I know you guys broke up. You ought to contact this kid, Vinnie. I know him well. He's a great singer-songwriter. Maybe you guys could make something work. So, you know, with all of that going on, we got in touch with Vinnie. He flew to Boston. We rehearsed at my rehearsal studio down in Braintree that I spoke of earlier, and we just hit it off, man. I'm telling you, within 3 or 4 days, I mean, we were doing, you know, Back on the Streets, Boys Are Gonna Rock. I mean, and they sounded amazing. And, you know, Vinnie was just kicking ass, and you know, Jimmy and Gary and I were, you know, putting the finishing touches to what this band would be. And we all decided, well, listen, if we're going to do this, let's put it together in L.A., which Jimmy and Gary and I said, yep, we're there. So within weeks, we were living in L.A. We were rehearsing at SIR Studios. KISS was rehearsing next door to us. Paul and Gene would come in and, you know, watch us, you know, rehearse and listen to our stuff. We got some seed money from CBS Records, did a demo, and we were just about to get signed. And Paul and Gene decided to hire Vinnie for the band. Now Vinnie had been co-writing and playing, you know, solos and doing studio work with KISS at the same time, so that relationship had already started to grow. But I'm telling you, the band Warrior, and I'm a fan of Vinnie's. You know, we had our trials and tribulations, as you know, but the stuff that we were doing back then was the very best stuff that I've heard Vinnie do. And I've heard the Invasion stuff, and I love the guys in the band. And I respect what they did. But I just think that the direction that Warrior was going in was the way to go back then. And had we continued on, we'd have been at the same stature as Motley Crue, Rat, and all the rest of the LA bands that were coming out at the same time. But Vinnie chose a different path, and that was great. And he established himself as a member of KISS at that time. Several months later, I moved back to Boston, and Jimmy and Gary stayed in LA and put Alcatraz together. And I moved back to Boston to continue on with my producing career. And Vinnie calls me and he says, "Hey, listen, man, we're KISS is playing at the Worcester Centrum. Do you want to come out and hang out with me?" So this was right at the tail end of the tour that Vinnie was on. And Vinnie and I got together that night, and it's funny, we had our own little dressing room, and we were just jamming on some of the riffs that we were playing, years before when we were doing Warrior. And we just hit it off. We knew we had something going there. And Vinnie said, well, listen, can I, the band's going to stop playing soon, go off tour, and we're probably going to do another record. Can I come and hang out with you up in Boston? And I said, absolutely. I had my recording studio back then. And Vinnie and I started putting together a new project, which eventually became the Vinnie Vincent Invasion. And once again, the stuff that we were doing back then was stellar. And I think that all that stuff's been re-released.
It has
recently.
It has been.
Yeah. So there's a record of what we had done out there, and the stuff that we were doing was just great. I remember we were down at Quincy Bay, which is right on the ocean, on the waterfront, and Vinnie was coming up with lyrics, and together we were singing "Baby Oh Why" in the car, and so we were recording, we were putting all these tracks together. We were, the stuff was sounding amazing. And I'll be honest with you, Vinnie went through a change. I don't know what happened. And it was a sad thing to see. We parted ways. It was a little bit unpleasant, to be honest with you. But I still say the stuff that we were doing back then was some of the best stuff that I've heard Vinnie do. And Vinnie kept on saying, man, we got to get a lead singer. We got to get a lead singer. Have you ever heard Vinnie sing stuff back then?
Yeah.
I mean, there's versions of Back on the Streets, and man, he was the absolute best lead singer around. And we were searching high and low for lead singers. Even when we were together in Warrior, we auditioned Robert Fleischman and Freddie Fredrickson and a bunch of other guys, and nobody came close to Vinnie. I mean, I love Robert. Robert's, all due respect to Robert, he's got one of the greatest voices in rock. But for Vinnie singing Vinnie, man, he should have stuck with that, and he should have rolled with it.
He really should have.
He really should have.
Oh man,
and,
big mistake.
And
my echo my echo has returned.
My echo has returned.
Oh no.
You're listening to Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. Rock Talk.
Well, you certainly can't say that I don't suffer for my art. Maybe I should repeat that I don't suffer for my art. Heart. Oh, you gotta love Echo. Anyway, here he is once again for the final time. Hirsh Gardner. We are back with Hirsh Gardner for part 3. That is what the recording gods have given us today. Now, we were talking about the Warrior thing. It is also available at cherryred.co.uk. You've got the studio recordings of 1982, along with the rehearsals featuring Fergie Fredrickson. Songs include Boys Gonna Rock, Gypsy in Her Eyes, Back on the Streets, and all that. So, yeah, I mean, that was a great little band that could have, should have, but Vinnie did what anybody would have done. If you're invited by Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley to come be in their band,
you go.
You go, and I will put forth the argument, and you will probably agree that if they had said, hey, Hirsh, come be our drummer, you probably would have gone. And if Gary had been invited to be the next guitarist or the bass player, he would have gone. So,
absolutely,
yeah. You can't hold a grudge for Vinnie for going to join KISS. I mean, I would have gone too, quite frankly. But anyway,
sure.
I'll ask you this, and then we'll wrap it up. But it comes up over and over again when discussing Vinnie Vincent that it's about his songwriting and his songwriting. KISS had him for Creatures of the Night because of the songwriting, and KISS had him on the Revenge album because of the songwriting, and the Vinnie Vincent Invasion was great. What is it about Vinnie and his approach that just he creates these great songs? I mean, you were in a room with him, you got to see it, you did the Warrior stuff. What is it about Vinnie Vincent's songwriting that really is apparently a cut above the rest?
Well, you know what? As a producer, and I did play that role with Vinnie on the on the second go around that I had with him just before the Invasion started. It's the phrases that he comes up with that are truly rock and roll phrases that everybody in the world can identify with. Baby, baby, oh why? Lick it up. back on the streets. And he puts together these, lyrical phrases that are just so simple, but so identifiable and so relatable by so many people. Not to mention the fact that the riffs that he was coming up with, on guitar, back then they were hit songs. And it's that simple. It's not that simple to do that, and there's not a ton of people out there in the world that can do that. But I think that's the answer to your question. I mean, they're just identifiable lyrics. They're great melodies. And what the hell? He had a great producer at that time, if I may say so.
Yeah.
Because we did have a great relationship. Hirsh, what do you think, man? What do you think? Really, should we do this? And no, you know what? Let's just cut that and go right to the chorus. The chorus is where it's at. So that's the kind of interplay that you have with an artist, where you're developing a song and making sure that arrangement is rock solid. And the arrangements that we were coming up with were working really well. They were working really well. So I think that's the answer to the question. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, it worked great. Let us remind the folks where we can see New England and, of course, the Hirsh Gardner Band.
Well, New England is going to be playing at the Spire Center for the Arts October 25th in Plymouth, Massachusetts, which is just about 40 minutes south of Boston. That's on October the 25th. It's a Friday night, and Saturday night we're playing at the Bull Run Music Hall, which is in Shirley, Massachusetts, which is about 40 minutes northwest of Boston. And the following week we're in Los Angeles, in Upland, California, at Grand Oaks Live. And all of this stuff is on the internet. Certainly please come out and see us play. We'd love to see our old friends and fans. I know in the past we've had people travel from great distances. We've had people from Australia, Japan, England come to see our shows, and I do know that there are people that are traveling worldwide to see the band on our upcoming shows. So please all join us. I just can't wait to see you all and rock and roll for you, which is what we do.
Yeah, and that'll be great. And we survived all the gremlins in the machine, or the ghosts in the machine, but Hirsh, merci beaucoup, as we say in Montreal. Thank you so much. And we will have to do an episode focused solely on the KISS Dynasty Tour and all the crazy stories that must go with that. But
oh yeah.
Et voila. Yeah, I know. We need to do just a Dynasty Tour show, like half an hour of where did it start, and Bill O'Coin and Paul Stanley and the first night and the last night and the middle nights. And
and Sean Delaney, parties at Sean's house, parties at Bill's. Parties at Bill's place at the Olympic Towers. Oh, man, yeah, it was the good old days, huh?
Rock and roll old days, yeah. And listen, I saw KISS the first time that night, and this past August 2019, 40 years later to the day, almost, I saw them in Montreal for the last time. So nice full circle, and we'll get the stories from you. And by the way, I must say, I love David Garibaldi, the painter, but I think for some of these dates, they should have invited you guys back out just for shits and giggles and say, listen, 40 years ago we did it together. Let's just do it again. I think it would have been cute or fun or whatever adjective you want to put for it.
It's fun. Keith LaRue, who I'm sure you know, is a dear friend of mine. And we actually talked about the same thing. And he also mentioned that Paul Stanley, during sound check, always plays "Don't Ever Want to Lose You" because he loves the guitar riff. So maybe we'll do a KISS. We may do a KISS cruise, and not this coming, but the next one. I'm going to put in my dibs to see if we can do a KISS cruise, and then have Paul Stanley join us on stage for "Don't Ever Want to Lose You." That would be a real good reason to go to the KISS cruise. Not that you really need one, but that's an added extra reason. But there you go. Thank you, sir. Merci. Je vous en prie.
There you go. Oh, okay. We got through this. That was bizarre.
You're listening to Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. Rock Talk.